Hey everyone, Shadow Rockets here, and today I'm going to be putting up a self-help video. Now, you may have heard earlier in the week that I want to do one on optimism. Now, you may be thinking, Shadow Rockets, optimism is a good thing. Why would you be doing a self-help video on something that's not going to be hurting people, but can only help them? Well, for this, I wanted to show you some very honest gameplay. It's not me just dominating. I'm still doing pretty well for my team. I believe in most of the games that I'm going to use for this, though, our team loses. We may have had a good start, but we end up losing in the end. So that it just goes to show that you don't always win, but you do have to take the good out of the bad. So I think to start off with, I should probably just define optimism. And that would be a form of positive thinking that includes the belief that you are responsible for your own happiness, and that more good things than bad will continue to happen to you. Optimists tend to believe that bad or negative events are rare occurrences, and that it's not their fault when something bad happens, but is due to something external. Now, I say that it's kind of foreshadowing because there are many different kinds of optimism, and I'm going to be, I guess, going into detail and describing all of those for you. So, as far as the different kinds of optimism goes, I'm gonna have to, there's a list of them, so just bear with me here. There's actually surprisingly a lot. So there's dispositional optimism, which is defined as a global expectation that more good things than bad will happen in the future to that person. And as a personality trait, it's presumed to be stable and has little scope for change, and is alternatively described as being just optimism. This is what everyone thinks of as optimistic. It even affects people's physical traits. I mean, optimism just, it makes you feel better about yourself. This dispositional optimism, this does affect, as I was saying, sorry I got interrupted there, the physical traits of a person. It makes you feel happier, makes you feel better about yourself, so it makes you a more proactive person, can lead to you doing more physical things, and mentally you'll be stronger. So dispositional optimism is probably the broadest, as I said earlier. It is probably the most important. So there is also unrealistic optimism, which is what people tend to separate from quote-unquote realism. But unrealistic optimism describes the objective mismatch between the expectations of dispositional optimism and the actual occurrence, or the probability of certain things happening. So it is essentially what people are referring to. I mean, it is just unrealistic. But I don't want to say that because it's only unrealistic to some people. And the question is whether it is irrational to view the adversities that you're going to face as something bad or something good. If you can benefit from a bad, quote-unquote bad thing happening, doing the little air bunnies here, then it's not necessarily something that you should view as a terrible occurrence, or you shouldn't say, oh, I'm a realist, this sucks. You should see that as a learning experience. It's okay to fail. Us as humans, I know we have a natural tendency to really want to avoid failure, but it's not always the worst thing. But now let me talk about optimism as an attribute. So, kind of, I want to say it's a style of reasoning about cause. So, they view, optimists of this sort view or attribute good events with performance. So they're likely to reoccur. Pervasiveness, or the goodness, quote unquote, will extend to future events. And internality, or I caused it and I will be able to cause this again. And these people also view bad events as impermanent, non-pervasive, and due to external causes, like I said earlier. So this would be the kind of person, not necessarily, I don't want to take it so far as those League of Legends toxic, like, oh, we lost, so it's everyone else's fault but me. But kind of, in an extreme case, that is this person. But moving ever onward, there's comparative optimism, which introduces relativity of expectation of good outcomes for the self compared with a similar other. So it's just saying, all right, well, it could have been worse. There's situational optimism, which is very specific. It's what you take out of a very specific event in your life. Some people think this could be a great experience for you. Some people could think, wow, that's terrible. Like, you give up your entire senior year for me in particular, to go to college instead of attending the high school. Well, I view that as getting ahead in college. It was free, so that's a very nice, very situational though. I mean, it's dependent on the person. Then there's strategic optimism, or you deny certain things because you think you have control over them. So this is really getting into the mental strength of a person and not having a mental block, let's say. Not necessarily like writer's block. I'll tell you a story about there's a hole number 6 at my home course, and always growing up, I thought, I need to hit it over this creek. It wasn't even really a creek. It was just a 5-foot wide, rocky, it was supposed to have water, but it never did, section. And if you hit a ball in there, chances are you're not going to be able to hit it out because there's so many rocks. But I would always think as a kid, I need to focus on hitting it over this. And I could obviously hit it over this. It was only like 30 yards in front of me. So I just had this mental block, though. I always sculled it right into the creek. And it was such a huge problem, it would ruin all of my rounds. This hole was just awful. I would do fine on every other hole, but that one always got me. So one of my friend's dads took me to the side and said, I think you have a mental block. And you need to focus, instead of saying, I need to hit it over this creek, imagine where you could be hitting it. Think about a spot on the fairway way downrange where you want it to go. Don't think about where you don't want it to go. So once I started doing that, I was fine. I got past that mental block, and everything was good. So there's kind of a decent example for you. I know that took up a little bit of time, but it was kind of important. It was kind of good. So then there's realistic optimism, which is the tendency to maintain a positive outlook within the constraints of available measurable phenomena situated in the physical and social world. Sorry, that's read directly from a critical report. So this is for those people that are more, they call themselves realists, but you can still stay positive. And this is a fine example of just being positive, I think. Not necessarily fully optimistic, whereas you always think on the bright side, but you're staying positive in the face of adversity. And then optimism bias, which is just, it is comparative and unrealistic. It's a cognitive bias. It causes a person to believe that they're less at risk of experiencing a negative event compared to other people. So it's kind of saying, like, I am more important than other people, or I am better than other people because in the past I have been better than other people. And every time something good happens to you, this just builds. So let me take a second, I guess. The final thing I kind of want to talk about is what causes optimism. And honestly, just the events in your life has caused that. There were experiments done where people had to turn their heads to the right and look all the way to the left to try and trigger one part of the brain. Obviously, the right hemisphere of the brain is full of negative emotions and the left hemisphere is related to positive emotions. So that test was kind of skewed, so we can't really go into that. But essentially, if you want to trigger the positive feelings in your mind, try to trigger the left hemisphere by turning your heads to the left and gazing far right. Yeah, exactly. So try that out. Depends on what you believe in. But essentially, events that have happened to you in your life have caused you to have the outlook that you have on life. And this is everything from actual physical events that have happened to you and parents, just what they taught you as you grew up, whether you thought you were learning from them or not. A wise old man once told me, I'm going to say he's a wise old man, he's my dad. He said, and this stuck with me, and I don't know if it's true or not, but it's kind of stuck in my mind, and that's that luck isn't real. You put yourself into situations where good things happen. So I'd really like you to take that with you today and this week, just thinking about optimism throughout the rest of the week. And I will come back at you next week with another self-help topic. Don't forget to like, favorite, comment, and subscribe. Shadow Rockets out.